All right, so taking a look at reading check quiz, and for this one, I think we were pretty good for the most part. Describe what ultimately happens to Beatty after taking Montauk to his own home. Alex, what was main event? Okay, so they're going to burn down his books. What ultimately then happens to Beatty, though?
He dies.
How? Okay, so Montauk kills Beatty. Using what's our weapon of choice?
Fire hose.
And you could say like flamethrower or fire hose. Either of those things would be acceptable. So he would be, burnt to death. It's not that he is like trapped necessarily within the house, that the house comes coming down on top of him or anything like that. But Montauk has to go through destroying the house, and then not that it happens instantaneously. There's a couple other things which we're going to get into when we take a look at the study guide. But that you have Montauk ultimately does turn the safety switch off, and now has the attack that we have on Beatty. One of the things that kind of comes up for discussion, and Montauk starts to kind of think about this on his own, is does Beatty have the desire to die, where it's almost kind of like a suicide in a way, where he willingly accepts his death? That's something that we'll kind of get into. But if you had that Montauk kills Beatty using fire hose, flamethrower, or anything along those lines, you'd be in perfectly good shape for that question and get full 2 out of 2 points. After burning down his home and possessions, what type of injury does Montauk suffer? And then who or what is responsible for the injury? So first part, for body, where does he have injury happen? Injury to his leg. And it's responsible for like the mechanical hound. Yeah, it has like that, the needle that kind of comes out and would inject stuff into him. So number one, he's got an injury to his leg. And that injury comes from the mechanical hound, where he almost kind of, this now is going to start like another pursuit that is going to be taking place with the people coming after Montauk. So throughout much of the chase scene that we then get into, you have him limping around and dealing with the pain. That's going to be the injury that he has stemming from his leg. All right. Number 3, this was one that some folks weren't too sure about. Prior to reaching Faber's home, why is Montauk certain that he will die when he thinks to himself, I'm done, it's over? It's not the mechanical hound. It's not the fire department coming after him. It's not a helicopter coming after him. And what happens? So he's crossing the street, he's walking on the boulevard, and you have like these almost like jet cars flying by. Remember, the typical mile per hour speed that would be going is like 110, 120 miles per hour, and there's a car that is coming after him that even kind of stops, does a turnaround. So he is certain that he is going to be hit by a speeding car. You did not have to include this, but who or what group are the drivers of the car? Bunch of, Nick? Bunch of teenagers, and then this is kind of what causes him, and Luke, you were kind of talking about this earlier, who does he start thinking about at this point? He starts wondering what if it's the same group of people that maybe could be responsible for the death of Claire Reese. So he's almost hit by a speeding car. Teenagers are driving. And this causes him to think about maybe what happened to Clarice. Okay.
Thank you.
Tommy, that's how this issue. Thanks for apologizing.
Yep. Mr. Kim, may I use the restroom, please?
Just got here.
I know.
No. Sorry.
Can I have my part 3 then? It's not me.
This is the quiz.
Okay.
We're just running through the answers. How do you feel for number 4?
I didn't get that one right.
You didn't get that one right? We didn't even put an answer for it.
I know.
Adam. You think Adam got it right?
No.
What?
No faith in Adam.
Definitely not.
He said he did not get number 4 right.
I can do number 4 because this is the one you said I missed, but I didn't. So we can go ahead and fight about this.
Oh, he took. I don't know why. We all know what the prison's obligated.
Alright, yeah, I did it number 4.
I got it. You get it.
You got part of it.
How did I get the other part wrong?
What do you have?
I said he missed the cross. Wait.
No, number 4.
He took the booze to cover his set from the house.
Okay, so he takes the whiskey, and and booze would be fine. You're not losing points for anything like that. Takes whiskey and clothes.
What? That's why I got it wrong.
So and you didn't have to have this part, but he hasn't mentioned it's in a suitcase. What's the whole point about taking this stuff? What's he trying to do, Ben? Hide his scent. And so before he gets into the river and whatnot, he's able to change into clothes. They're Faber's old clothes, so it's scent of Faber. This was not part of number 4, but just kind of recapping. What are things that he tells Faber to do as he is leaving?
Like, clean his whole house, rub everything down with alcohol, and like turn on the sprinklers.
And then you turn on the sprinklers and the whole idea again to try to get rid of the scent. And as he is leaving, he notices the sprinklers are coming on, and then the dog is starting to kind of come around the corner. And you have, if you're watching this like in a movie, that suspenseful pause where the dog is probably going to start sniffing and maybe kind of inch toward Faber's home, and then decides to back off and continue on the way. So you get the sense that there's something going on. But the whole idea for it, how does this prove useful later in the novel? It helps Montauk cover his scent or tracks, so to speak, from the mechanical hound. Number 5, in as much detail, I'm not going to write everything down involving the chase scene, but you certainly kind of end up getting to the ironic ending that would be happening at the end. Chase certainly keeps going and going and going. Ultimately, what is strange about Montauk seeing these events unfold? How does he witness what's happening with the chase? And specifically, like the conclusion of it. He's watching it on TV. So he's seeing the finality of it. Of course, Granger's there at this point. And ultimately, from the police standpoint, is it a successful chase?
No. But I killed that dude.
Kind of depends on how you want to look at it. It's successful in the sense that as far as the public is concerned, they end up catching a person. So the ironic twist, and there were multiple ways in which people were kind of getting credit for this, but Montauk watches, quote unquote, himself get captured by the police. But people were certainly including details where they're telling people to come outside to look for Montauk, that it's on the news all over the place. The hound is certainly chasing him, helicopters going overhead, but he ends up being captured as he's watching all of this stuff kind of unfold on TV. So as far as the public is concerned, it's a successful chase because he ends up getting caught with it. All right. Number 6, who's Granger? Tommy, do you think Adam got this one right? Do you think Tommy got this one right?
No, you didn't.
No faith in him whatsoever. Different details that we could put for this. What would be one thing we could put, Ben? And like roughly, where would he be? Like, okay, so he's outside the city. Granger by himself. Host of other people. Some folks were kind of put that he would be like a leader of the rebels, so to speak, who are going against him. He is one who, with your study guide, There's a question about the mirror factory, which we'll kind of get into that. He welcomes Montauk into the group. But certainly those would kind of be details that you could include as to who Granger would ultimately be. And then the last one we got here for number 7. Explain why Granger's description of a silly damn bird called a phoenix is relevant to the end of the book. Outside of a city in Arizona, what is a phoenix?
It's a bird.
What happens to the bird? It, according to mythology, and you'll get differing years, most are around 500 years. The bird will live to be 500 years old, and then it consumes itself in fire, burns to ashes, and then it is reborn. It comes back to life. So what would be the relevancy of a bird that starts over or is reborn through fire? Well, with the end of the book, ultimately, what happens to Millie? What happens to her friends? What happens to the people who are watching the chase on TV? What happens to the people in the gas station? They all die because they're the bombers, the jets come in, bomb the city. It's an unnamed city. We don't know exactly where it is, whether it's Phoenix or not. But the city is destroyed through fire and must be reborn. So there's going to be definite parallelism with what happens with the Phoenix as to what's going to be happening with the city. So and that'll certainly kind of lead into Granger's whole thing about building a mirror factory, where you're taking a look at a screen that lets you see yourself, as opposed to a screen that is focusing on other people that you have with Millie and the TVs and all that kind of stuff. So the description of this bird that goes through fire, comes back, must start over. It's essentially the same thing that's going to be happening with the main city that they are from. So they're going to head back, build the city over after it's been destroyed through fire. Right? So that was our stuff for our reading check quiz that we're taking a look at yesterday. Those of you that took it today, you'll be able to kind of get it back tomorrow. If you turned in your study guide to me, you can certainly still kind of follow along. Add these notes then to the study guide that you have, because I want to be able to kind of look at it first before we start running through things. So for the study guide, what action has Mildred taken? What does this show about her values? Let's start with the first part. What's the main thing that she does? Number one that kind of sets everything into motion, Luke?
She done snitched on Montage, showing how one-sided she is, saying that she's lost.
So she turns Montauk into the authorities. What's that say about her values?
She got it herself.
So she's more concerned about herself. And what could you even throw in with herself? Because by turning in Montauk, she's probably hoping that what's going to happen to the house, even though this ends up not being the case, maybe it gets saved, because then she would still be able to have her parlor, her TV, her quote-unquote family, but then she realized what's happening because she's packing everything in, but that she worries certainly more about herself than her, I'm going to put true family, since she always considers the TV kind of to be her family as well. When she says everything's gone now, realize that the house is going to be destroyed, she's upset. That her family, this being the quotation family going back to the TV, is gone and lost. Kind of play off this one. Why do you think Beatty lets the first alarm ride? Who's the first people to turn in Montauk? he certainly has suspicion. This would be Beatty, but who's the first people to actually turn in? You have Mrs. Bowles, Bowles, and the folks who they're kind of reading the poem. When he comes in at the end of part 2, after he reads the poetry, they turn in the alarm. Beatty doesn't do anything with it. Beatty certainly would have his own suspicions that something would go on. Why do you think let that one go and he waits until Millie calls in before he actually turns it in? We don't get an answer for this one. It's going to be kind of inference. Why do you think he does that? I know Adam did something. I know you did it. And I know because Elena told me. You know what? Just tell me. Why'd you do it? Did. I'll get Mr. Weber down here. He's like 264 pounds. Nimble on his feet, solid muscle. All you have to do is admit that.
Solid muscle.
Mr. Weber don't want no work. He wants to
Solid muscle. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about you.
But I'm worried about him.
Why do you keep dodging the issues, Adam?
I
You
got
did.
it.
If you admit what you did, everything would be so much easier. We don't have to go through all these steps. Thank you. What did he finally do? He admitted to it. He confessed. So maybe one of the reasons, again, possibility, we don't know why let the first alarm arrive. Well, remember, Beatty ends up having the whole conversation with Montauk about dreams and them getting in arguments at the end of part 2. Alarm goes off. Let's go to the house. Let's see what's happening. It could be that Beatty actually wants Montauk to confess, admit that he has books. He might get more pleasure out of that. Rather than having someone else just turn him in, because it would make it feel like there's more of a victory that you would have a person confess. So he might want Montauk to confess. Any other ideas?
I said the staring confused me.
Like into thinking that he's not going to be caught earlier?
Yes.
What's significant about having Millie be the one call it in, as opposed to the other ladies? Okay, and I mean, and they might not necessarily have the typical relationship that we would expect of a married couple, but it's his wife. It's the one who he would kind of care about the most. So it could hurt more to have Millie turn him in, because certainly Montauk's hoping that Millie will ultimately be on his side. He's the one who shares the books with Millie. He's the one who's trying to get her to kind of come to his side. Clearly it doesn't happen, so she ends up being the one to do the final turn-in submission that he is guilty of having the book. So it's probably more of a psychological warfare that would take place, trying to get him to confess, kind of making him possibly paranoid, scared, and confused, and then also you could be hurt by the fact that Millie ends up being the one who is turning him in, as opposed to someone who he wouldn't care deeply about quite as much. Number 2, what attitude or aspect of human nature is fire symbolic of? And then Beatty kind of talks about the whole philosophy of burning a problem rather than facing it, which you could kind of argue they tend to do. Whether it be simply within the book or just in human nature, what do we think of fire being symbolic of?
Earth, hell, death,
Negative connotations. What else? So far as anything positive? Passion. Light. Not really out there right now, but what do we kind of think of to be the ultimate ball of fire? Okay, well, warmth, and why is the sun necessary for us? It provides warmth, it gives us life, it's something that is able to kind of sustain us. So it can certainly have death, as the case you have with Beatty, punishment, hell, things like that. There also can be some positive, put light again, warmth, life. So it has the ability to do both things. Something that I think people like to try to do is have the ability to control it. Is kind of like a human desire, a human, it's an innate thing. People like being able to build fire. People like being able to control fire.
Yeah, I love playing with fire.
But if you have folks who can't control it,
That's why I keep it controlled. You know what I'll do in my room? I'll take like a little tin can.
you start a fire in your room.
We do a lot of stuff.
This is not good.
I'll
This
take,
is
like,
why you
bottles.
need to confess
I'll take
stuff.
like old bottles and I'll like rip them up, put them in there, and then
Is Luke in your room when you were doing this?
he's been in there while we've done some things like that.
Yeah, we've done some pretty fun stuff.
Why don't we sound like
Why they thinking like that?
He's been all creepy.
Adam, talk to me at lunch. We'll have a discussion about friendship and breaking friendship, moving in new directions.
I want you in the elevator.
All right, so what attitude or aspect of human nature is fire symbolic of? It can certainly be any of these things, kind of dependent upon the situation that you're in. Within the world of Fahrenheit 451, I would say this would kind of be the issue that you're dealing with more so than anything else. But folks like to be able to have idea of control. Beatty sees fire as being, and this would be the thing with burning a problem, Beatty's viewpoint is that fire is the quote-unquote great equalizer. It's kind of like the judge. It can provide positive things, life, sustain it, warmth, light, passion, but at the same time, it can also eliminate things, hence you have the books being burned and whatnot. Fire department here, they're not the ones who are putting out the fires, they're the ones who are causing the fires. So there's certainly, going back to this term that we had before, a great amount of control and power that kind of goes along with fire. And I would say that, if anything, might be the preeminent value that sometimes people will associate with it. If you're able to control it, you can use it for the means that you want, whether it be something that is positive or whether it is something that is negative. So the idea of control, power would certainly be two aspects of human values that fire is able to embody. Do you do those dance moves while you and Adam are building fires?
Like, I don't, every single time anybody says anything, you do anything weird, it's just going to be associated with that. Thank you.
Yes. Hence the term guilty by association.
I got one thing on my knee.
How about number 4? Before Montauk ends up killing Beatty, Beatty realizes what's happening. Montauk toggles the safety on his flamethrower, turns it off, and then Beatty's eyes widen right before it's about to happen. First part, why do you think there's a look of surprise? Could be surprised that Montauk will follow through with it. What's going to be a concern that's probably going to be happening for Beatty at this point?
Oh no.
Life is over. Certainly death would be something that could be coming his way.
Death is imminent.
And at this point, it's pretty much going to be inevitable. Beatty realizes he has a distinct disadvantage. There's no weapon for him whatsoever. So certainly that's going to be some issues to happen.
What the guy thing?
That it?
Tesla's making flamethrowers. Yeah, like the old.
Yes, and then you can get your fire extinguisher for an extra $30 that comes along with it. Don't buy a flamethrower from
If I had a
Tesla.
flamethrower, oh my god, that would be so
From where? Tesla.
The dude that
Elon Musk.
just like
Oh,
making
yeah.
SpaceX, Tesla, all those things.
Voice tester, definitely.
For Montauk, let's come back up to here. Montauk killing Beatty. Revenge or Morderate? For some, you will have the look that maybe Beatty wants to die.
Uh-oh. That's what, suicide.
Question would end up kind of being why. Well, Beatty certainly seems to be knowledgeable about books. Anytime they talk about books, Beatty is quoting it. Now, he's going to argue that this is from him being responsible for eliminating them, getting rid of those problems, burning those problems, so there's no issue. A problem that could exist, though, is Beatty might actually have a love of books, and he would rather die, no longer have to hide his love for books, his desire for books, than going through with this mirage of basically faking that he wants to eliminate all books. It could be simply revenge for Montauk, in the sense of Beatty's the one responsible for all the issues that are happening. You also have Beatty hinting pretty strongly about knowledge of Clarice. So one of the issues also could be that if he thinks Beatty is responsible for Clarice's death, that this would end up being a justified killing.
May I please use the bathroom?
I was waiting for you to ask again. You can go this time.
I put like a piece of paper in the oven. I put it at 450 degrees. I put it burn.
If your oven is well made, it will not burn.
We had this conversation.
Wait, it
I
will
was
not
broke.
burn?
Shouldn't.
Why?
Because paper burns at
Cardboard.
451.
That's cardboard. I'm talking about a piece of paper. Cardboard and paper is the same.
It would-
Definitely not.
Adam, it would start to brown. I mean, like, it's not that, it's going to wrinkle and things like that and kind of harden a little bit. But scientifically, it's not until 451 degrees that it would actually ignite. It would be like if you had water at 33 degrees. It's going to be cold, but you're not actually going to start to get that ice forming. Now, keep in mind, if it's 32 degrees and there's a puddle outside, it's not solid ice that you're going to go skating on or something like that, but you start to get ice forming. With the fire, if it's at 451, you put a piece of paper and it's not going to burst into flames like a bomb is just blown up, but you'll start on the edges to get the charring, and then you'll see a little bit of flame, and then it'll consume. So you keep water outside long enough at 32, it'll turn into an ice cube. If you have the paper long enough at 451 degrees, it will consume itself in flame. But if it's 449, 450, and that oven's well made, don't try this at home. The paper will not burn. Should not burn.
Don't try it.
Do not try it at home.
Right now we do it.
Why do you think Montauk's expressing regret about when he calls himself an awful fool, an idiot?
Because he killed that boy.
Guilt over Beatty's death could be a possibility.
He has feeling now.
Also, he has certainly caused more trouble for himself. Now he's not just wanted for having books, but he's also wanted for murder. So that's certainly going to compound the issue. Plus, if you know that he's going to be going to Faber's house or something along those lines, he's also now probably incorporating more people into being accessory to murder and things along that idea. Number 6, when he goes to the gas station, on the TV, there's a declaration of war. How do the people in the gas station respond?
Great.
No, it was like, no big deal.
They continue pumping gas. They continue having conversation about the typical things. So they certainly don't seem to be upset about it. Earlier, before certainly this whole war scene takes place, Montauk makes reference that they've already won 2 atomic wars since the year 2022. So this is going to be the 3rd such war, atomic war,
Wait, what happened?
in the last 300 years or so. So it's not that something that's constantly happening, but it's certainly more than just one time an issue, but no one seems to care.
Wait, the 3rd atomic war was in that city?
For the United States.
Just that, like,
Montauk makes a reference that we've won 2 atomic wars since 2022. So it would be the 3rd time that at least the nation would be involved in a significant war of that nature. No one seems to be concerned about it, so there's certainly going to be questions about how much information is truly known about what would be happening, what is truth, what information is being divulged to the public, what are they allowed to kind of think for themselves, or do they pretty much just have no idea as to what's going on. So far on the way to Faber's house, most people are getting good with this one. What's the main plan that Montauk has at this point? He's got his books.
Oh, he's gonna go plan it at Mrs.
Plants books at Mr. Black's home. Remember, you have Black. The other fireman besides Beatty is also Stoneman. It's probably no coincidence that you have Mr. Black, something that's been burned, charred, Stoneman, lack of feeling. So there's lack of human qualities with these folks, since you have someone with a stone face or something that is charred, something that is burned, something that is no longer there. So the whole idea is to get the salamander to devour its tail, as we were talking about with part 2, and so this is taking place here with him leaving the books. Montauk's daydream about watching himself get caught by a mechanical hound on TV. So far as his mental state, pretty good chance at this point that he is becoming increasingly paranoid and aware that he might get caught. The description with the TV audience, we pretty much covered that stuff. Tomorrow, when we come back, we're going to take a look towards the end of the book where I want to get into detail about Granger and his whole idea down here with question number 15 about the mirror factory, because this is going to be pretty significant to hopefully the change that they would be trying to have take place by the end of the book. So we'll start with the mirror factory. The other page, you have your page with symbols that we had from part 2. On the back of it, you got symbols from part 3 from last week. We're going to be using that sheet as well. So have your book, have the symbol sheet from last week that has the part 2 and part 3.